Hello. Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing? Having a good time, BCC? Okay, all right. So, question. How many of you want to see an application built on crypto reach hundreds of millions or billions of people? Okay. Safe. This is a safe audience to go ask that question. So, over the next 10 minutes, I'm here to tell you why this is the right moment to do so, and hopefully give you some ideas on how to do so. So, first off, I'm Sriram Krishnan. I'm a partner at Andreessen Horowitz on the crypto team. But for the last close to a decade, I was on the dark side. I was inside the belly of the beast. I worked in all the Web2 companies. I was at Meta. I was at Twitter. I was at Snapchat. So I'm a defector from the forces of darkness to the forces of light, is what I like to say. And about a little over a year ago, Vitalik did this talk called Things That Matter Outside of DeFi. And I remember watching this talk, and there's a bit in here about why social media and crypto are meant for each other. And there's a lot of amazing stuff in there. I highly recommend the talk. He talks about censorship resistance. He talks about credible neutrality. But I remember watching this talk, and as somebody who spent close to a decade working on large consumer applications, I remember thinking, okay, all these are amazing crypto primitives that I know the people here and the crypto community can build, but the world of social media is stuck in a different era, and things need to change. Well, what I want to do over the next 10, 11 minutes, if you remember nothing else from this morning here in Paris, is to try and convince you that now is the moment to go build large-scale crypto consumer social media marketplace applications. And if you remember nothing else, if you just remember this, I consider myself job well done and goal accomplished. So, when people think of large consumer platforms, and I'm going to say consumer platforms, social media marketplaces interchangeably, but think Instagram, Meta, TikTok, YouTube. They think of these as large companies. But I think there's something different. I think these are complex systems that exist in sort of an uneasy equilibrium, because there are multiple people at play. There are the executives and the company themselves. Then there are the hundreds of millions of people or the billions of people that use these platforms. And obviously, they have hopes and needs and wants. Then they exist in competition with each other. They have to compete with each other. And for those of you, and I know that some of you, I see Sam over there, I think some of you who are really into game theory and how coordination works, you're probably familiar with the idea of a Schelling point. It's a fancy way of saying sometimes when you have a bunch of complex systems, a complicated system dynamics, you just arrive at a certain set of decisions that everybody agrees on. Not because they're optimum, just because the way history has played out, everyone agrees this is the way we're going to go do things. And that's what happened in social media. For the last, say, decade, every major company has sort of agreed this is the way we do things. None of this will be a surprise, but let me quickly walk through them. The first is your graph. And by that I mean your friends, your followers, your subscribers, whatever you want to call it, is locked into these companies. That didn't always used to be the case, but right now, there's probably some weird JSON export that you can get if you really want to. But your friends, your Instagram followers, you're going to be Instagram followers. Your TikTok algorithm and who you like on TikTok is going to be stuck with TikTok. Your YouTube subscription is stuck with YouTube. You can't take them with you when you leave. There's no right to exit. Second, over the last decade, the API support for third-party clients has dwindled, or in some cases, non-existent. Some of you are a bit older. I'm really old. And you might remember a time over 10 years ago when you could build a full-fledged third-party Facebook client or a full-fledged third-party Twitter client. No longer the case. Companies like TikTok don't even have third-party clients for a bunch of reasons. And mostly because they were ad-based companies. And if your business model is you want to show ads to people, you want to control the ways in which you can show things to people. Simple. Third, no surprise to all of us, they were limited to no economics for creators. The agreement with you and a social media company was, you give me content, I give you attention, and that's it. The idea that I give you a revenue share, that I give you some of the money I'm making, didn't even enter in the context until very recently, and there are some small steps, but it's still not meaningfully done. And finally, it is interesting because my previous speaker was talking about governance. that topic doesn't even enter into Web2 companies. You don't have a seat at the table. You're not in San Francisco or Palo Alto. You're not influencing any decision. Obviously, none of this is a surprise. And what I want to talk about next is something quite straightforward, which is heist movies. And the reason I bring this up is I love heist movies. Everyone loves heist movies. Everyone loves Ocean 11, yeah? And the reason I love them is they all have a similar construct, put the team together, there's one more task you have to do, et cetera, there's a reversal. But, if you think about it, why is it that, all these casinos always have like some ridiculously weird, well, there's this underground vault and there's this super complicated AI program and there's all these complicated things that they've somehow all decided on together, right? So that's one, also makes the movie interesting. But the second part of it that you see is that it takes more than just one element to go rob a casino in Ocean's 11 or to go get that safe out in Fast 5 or pick your example. It takes multiple things, and it is almost always like there is a factor where it's at the right moment in time. Ocean's 13, that's when the casino is actually opening. It's the only time you could do it. So all these factors have to come together to reverse the shelling point or to find a new equilibrium. And I'm here to tell you that things have changed in the social media world. And now the shelling point is gone, and we can now go to something else. And I'm going to walk through this thing very quickly. There's no surprise, I think, people here. The first is, for about, say, a decade, we lived in a bull market. Cost of capital was low. Advertising spend kept going up. So if you were a large tech company, the pressure was not on to, say, reduce headcount or to grow revenue. Things were just happening. Things were just going up and to the right. Now, that changed, right? I think pretty much all of us are aware for the last year and a half, interest rates have come down, so now, interest rates have gone up, rather, and so now every tech company is like, well, how do we cut headcount? How do we make more revenue? Things are much tougher. You can't get away with the things that you used to. That's number one. Number two is what I call the AI protests. How many of you have seen the recent Reddit blackouts? Okay, there's a few of you. Very simple. Reddit and a bunch of companies are saying that, hey, you can't use our APIs for free. You can't use your data for free, especially because some of the folks who are using it free tend to be these large LLM companies who, in turn, are not giving any money back to Reddit or Twitter or the case may be. Of course, there are a couple of interesting things. One is there's the pressure to make revenue and the pressure to now make API programs expensive and paid for, which is now happening. The second interesting thing is you had the communities of these social media companies, in this case Reddit, some cases Twitter, speak up, protest, try and really find ways to express their voice in ways they hadn't really done so before. Again, something which has never really happened before, also happening now. And third, and maybe most dramatically, is Elon Musk. So full disclaimer, I was slightly involved with Elon at Twitter, and I'm a big fan of him. But I think it's safe to say that Elon really changed the way social media companies were run. And a lot of people are fans, a lot of people are not fans. But I think what everyone agrees on is that when he took over Twitter, he started doing things that change how social media companies are run, either be it content moderation or reducing headcount. And because of that, you got a bunch of different kind of companies and projects trying to build different versions of Twitter. And I'm not talking about just Mark Zuckerberg threads. I'm talking about the Fediverse companies. I'm talking about companies like Farcaster, which I'm an investor in, a bunch of different players who are all like, hey, maybe I don't agree with how I want to kind of have my own say. I want to have a very different experience. So all of these together has completely changed the landscape of social media and marketplaces also, I think. And I think now is absolutely the right time for projects and companies built on top of crypto primitives to really find ways to reach broad market adoption. Okay, so if you don't, nothing else, I was like, at one point I was going to stop with this slide because I was going to be like, this is going to be a call to action where I just want to tell people like, go out and go forth and build. But then I was like, okay, well, what are some ways we can try approaching this? Now, I don't know for sure what the billion user project built on crypto primitives in social media is going to look like. But I have some ideas. And so these kind of like avenues for exploration based on my experience on social media companies. So the first one is that if you look at every successful social media company, they've always had a very similar pattern. They've always gone after people who have no followers or no audience in an existing platform, but were high social status. So for example, with Snapchat, it was high school teenagers. With TikTok, it was people like Charli D'Amelio. And if you look at all of these, none of them were existing superstars or celebrities. So, one of my friends, Eugene Wei, has a great post called Status as a Service, which talks about how every social media company falls into this construct, which is you go after people who are underserved on an existing platform, but have high status. So in some ways, this is the opposite of a vampire attack where you go after whales, because you're not going after whales. You're not going after high status people. You're not going after people with large audiences or huge product market fit. You're going after people who are underserved, but are interesting. And interesting is in the eyes of the beholder. Interesting because a lot of people follow, a lot of people value them, a lot of people want to mimetically follow them, whatever way they are high status. So I think this is one very interesting path. I think some companies have struggled because what they've tried to do is to try and go after the most popular people on, say, an existing platform. I think that's way more challenging. Because if you already have huge product market fit on an existing platform, the reason for you to move is much more limited. So path A, find people high status, low product, underserved on the existing mechanism. The second, and this might be somewhat controversial in this venue, is I think that financial mechanisms should play little to almost no role in these projects. And this sounds almost like maybe blasphemous to say, talking at ECC. And the reason for I say that is I've seen a lot of projects struggle because when you financialize something so quickly out of the gate, I think it has a couple of issues. The first is that social media dynamics are weird and complicated. Why does someone post something? Is it to get clout? Is it to be popular? These are complex human dynamics. And when you introduce just a rationalizing everything as money, I think it becomes very challenging to kind of map those dynamics onto just one monetary component. The second part of it is I think it brings in a lot of people who are motivated by the monetary element, as opposed to, hey, I'm just going to post some fun content and I'm going to bring my community over. So my theory, and again, I could be wrong about all of this, is that the things which wind up succeeding are things which really focus on community and interesting content and interesting experiences. And the financial side of things is actually a minor to a non-existent mechanism. Now, the third part, and this is probably not controversial at all, is I think creators are highly underserved by existing platforms. You don't get financial economics. You sort of are starting to see some companies do it, and you definitely don't get a seat at the table. And one thing I think crypto and the folks here are really good at is building incentive mechanisms where you can fix both of that. So I think bringing in creators, making sure they get a fair share of the value they bring to the table, making sure they have a say in how these communities are run or these projects are run is going to be a very, very interesting part. The fourth part of it is composability. If you need to build an interesting experience on top of, say, Facebook today or TikTok today, you can't. You probably have to go maybe get an API key or maybe befriend a VP at Facebook. It's probably impossible. Crypto, obviously, that is crazy. And I think the name of the game here is just permissionless innovation and composability. The idea that anybody with a laptop can crank it open, write some code, and build an innovative experience on top without ever talking to somebody. And I think the idea of building these composable social media applications is going to be really interesting. For example, imagine if you could bring your own algorithm to the social media platforms you use, or you could have a pick of algorithms. Imagine you could have your own pick of desktop clients that you could use, or mobile clients you could use, or any number of different things. So I think the permissionless nature of composability is going to be really powerful and profound. And the second part of it, I think, is that it's going to make these projects really hard to kill. How many of you have run Linux on a desktop machine anytime recently? Okay, again, Sam again. Okay, so, and you. Okay, so I probably the first time I did this was when I was a kid back in the 90s. I actually did, again, like a few weeks ago. And over the last 30 years, every single time, I always had to go type out something in x.org, xorg.conf rather. It's a little config file that has existed for 30 years despite everyone's attempts to kill it. And the reason is because over the last 30 years, there's been this entire ecosystem of applications and tool sets. So even now, if you want to get your graphics card working on a desktop Linux ecosystem, you probably have to go type in and change this file. And I was thinking about that, where if you become a primitive on a social media primitive or marketplace primitive on which other people go build applications on top of, you're going to become impossible to kill. And I think that's a very good thing. So this is the last scene from Ocean's 11, for those of you who've seen the movie. There's in the front of the Bellagio, they all gotten rich, and they're like, go forth and live your lives. And that scene always kind of brings me so much hope and optimism. The sequels haven't been made then. And I guess kind of what I want to leave you with, because I think we live in a very interesting time, definitely a time for social media that has not existed for the last 10 years, and I worked in all of these companies, and I think it's on all of us to go build something amazing that can reach hundreds of millions of people. So I hope somebody here or somebody watching this goes and does so. If you do, send me a DM or note. I'm Sriram K on Twitter, on Farcaster, sriramkracings.com, but go forth and build. That's all I had. Thank you. Yeah.